Welcome back. I'm Ramisa Rob, Geopolitical Insights Editor at the Daily Site. Today joining me is energy expert Dr. Ijaz Hussain. Welcome, Dr. Ijaz. I wanted to start by asking you about the fuel crisis in Bangladesh right now and why and how we are in this precarious state.
Okay, the fuel crisis that we are experiencing is predominantly because we are an import dependent country. With respect to liquid fuels, that is diesel, octane, petrol, kerosene, we import nearly all of it, nearly 100%, except for a little bit of petrol that is produced in the country. That comes out of the natural gas we produce. We produce condensate, and that condensate is made into mainly petrol and a little bit of diesel. So, we are heavily import dependent when it comes to liquid fuel. I mean, we've always known that Bangladesh does not have oil. Okay, and these are oil. When we talk about the crisis right now, it's an oil crisis predominantly. Of course, natural gas also comes from the same area. So naturally, if you're so heavily dependent, it will affect us very badly. We are going to be affected by the gas prices very soon, but up to now, we haven't been touched by that, but it will probably come very soon. Right up to now, we are experiencing a fuel crisis, predominantly diesel, octane.
So, regarding diesel, what is a solution for Bangladesh currently importing diesel and also just generally about the Eastern Refinery? There's been concerning reports that have been coming out, so I wanted to understand your take on that.
Okay, so like I said, the diesel is 100% imported. So that has to come somewhere. We have a refinery, Eastern Refinery, which sort of refines about 1.3 million tons per year, and from that we get about 500,000 ton of a little bit more than that, 500,000 ton of diesel. But the rest of the diesel has to be imported as a refined product from different places. So we import that mainly from Singapore. Now it might appear, oh, so Singapore, that is not affected, but no, they are also very affected, and they declared force majeure because they're a refining hub. They get the crude from the Middle East. So if the Middle East affected, they're also affected. So we can't get more diesel from them. So what we are doing is that right now we are hunting around all over the world to see whatever diesel we can get. And we have looked into even what I think Kazakhstan and India has promised a little bit of diesel to us, and they're trying to give us more. And whatever other every country has some amount of diesel and other fuels which they can probably spare. So we are looking into those. But the main hubs and the supplies, they are all very tight.
So, in domestically, in order for our this dependence on imported oil, how can Bangladesh be more self-sufficient for crises like these happening in the future?
Well, the funny thing is that with respect to oil, we've never tried recently to reduce our dependency on oil. Somehow there's been a belief that we'll always be able to import it. Way back, I remember way back in Pakistan times, this used to be a big issue because in those times we had excess gas, and the only issue was importing oil. And in fact, we used to import much less than now, but we still used to worry a lot about that, and that used to be a sizable portion of our annual import budget, and used to take up a lot of our export earnings. So now the situation changed dramatically after we started earning through our remittances, and through our garments industry. So we became kind of sort of complacent, I would say, in many ways, that we will be able to afford energy. If we can't sort of produce it internally, indigenously, we will be able to buy it. And that's what led the Awami League government into going for LNG, which we are now finding was a completely disastrous move by neglecting gas exploration and going for LNG. At that time, for some peculiar reason, LNG was very cheap. So they believed that it would not affect the country at all if we sort of, relied on imported energy. Oil, we never worried about it. We just thought that whatever we need, we will import. But in the last few years, the we are realizing that the consumption of diesel has become so high that we need to do something. So one way to get rid of the supply problem is to build another refinery. And as you probably heard, the government is trying to build another refinery. But that does not decrease our dependence on it. It improves our supply situation, because right now, like you talked about Eastern Refinery, if we had another refinery, then we would say, okay, we can get some from the refinery. But like in Singapore, we still have to get the crude, which remains a problem. We'll probably be able to save some money, because these refined products tend to become very expensive, and during crisis times they become even more expensive. We call that a premium. So the premium becomes very high during crisis periods, and we suffered from this during the Ukraine-Russia war. Now, Ukraine-Russia war was a price shock, but this time it's a double whammy, as they say. It's a price shock and a supply shock. Right now, what we are doing, we're experiencing the supply shock, because the government has said that whatever it costs, we will get the diesel, get the octane. So they're trying their best. But even being willing to pay the high prices, we're not getting it, because not getting it meaning is proving to be very difficult. I mean, what we are seeing is that ships arriving, but they are not a very large quantity. Okay, so that we need to keep on at it, so that there is no supply gap.
And in terms of ships arriving, I wanted to understand the insurance companies, insurers start charging higher prices. That's a situation I don't really understand. For example, Lloyd's, there is a conversation going on that they're also charging higher prices, even if Iran lets Bangladesh tankers pass through. So would that
Well,
also add?
yes, but that discussion was happening when the Hormuz Strait was open, and sort of ships were coming through. Then the talk was that since, let's say, one or two ships may get blown up, now who will pay for that? Of course, the insurers will pay for that. So naturally, when that kind of risk comes up, insurers immediately increase the premium, because they know that they have to cover it somehow. But right now, ships aren't getting through. Or if you do want to bring a ship through, there is always that risk that something will happen, which wasn't there. So the obviously the insurance premium will go up. So that's what is happening really. All this, if you say that you will take your ship past the yeah, Strait of Hormuz, even though you've got permission from Iran, they are not fully convinced that the ship will not be attacked or nothing will happen. So they to ensure that they are asking for higher premium.
And what do you make of the well, now to transition to your point about LNG, which was that you said it was a disastrous decision, and as we're seeing Qatar, what I'm confused about is why isn't Bangladesh buying LNG from the United States? Is that not an option for Bangladesh?
Well, it's a very interesting question you asked. If you read the newspaper and what Dr. Devopriyo has been saying, he was saying that these treaties with the United States is against Bangladesh, because it actually talks about buying energy from there, rather than going for open tender and buying from somewhere else. Okay, so we might be forced to buy from the United States a little. Now, it's very interesting that LNG, uh, like United States became an LNG exporter only in the last few years. I mean, they used to be an LNG importer, but there's been so much production of shale gas in the United States, and there's so much production of other oil that, look, even in this big, huge crisis, the price of energy or gas and fuels have increased very little in the United States, mainly because they're self-sufficient and they can export. So yes, of course, we can buy and we should buy, but Bangladesh government has a rule that they will float tenders, and whoever comes up as the cheapest will win that award. So that if you go through that, and if this US suppliers cannot match, then it's difficult to buy. But you can always have a what is called a G2G, government to government deal, and decide to buy from United States. But the problem with the United States, these companies are private; they're not. Like from Qatar, you can do a G2G contract. So in the future, of course, we can buy, and we probably will buy from United States of America gas. But remember, United States is a very, very new player in the LNG market.
And so why are people, do you think people are panicking about LNG because of the industries? And is there an alternative to LNG that you would suggest that already exists?
That's an important question. What is happening is that we've always been Bangladesh has always been a what is called a gas dependent country. Okay, we've always whenever we talk about energy, we talk about natural gas. Everything, and I've been lecturing a lot of people that don't do this, don't put all your eggs in one basket, and we've been doing that for quite some time. And our industry doesn't understand anything other than gas. So if there's no gas, they think, oh, we'll have to close down the industry. But then what else is there? Coal is very, very dirty, very difficult. But India doesn't have gas. In most places in India, most industries in India do not run on gas. So they have learned how to manage industries without gas. But because we have been kind of spoiled, I'll say, and we've been continuing in this way for so long, so we are gas dependent. So what is happening is that we've been producing gas in Bangladesh for a long, long time. That's our main fuel, and it's indigenous. It's also very cheap. Around about 2010, we realized that we are probably spending more than we can afford to spend from our reserves, and that continued until 2015. In 2015, there was a kind of a supply shortage of gas, our own gas, that is the gas we bring up from our own ground or whatever. That's a time when the government decided that, oh, we're running out of gas, we need more gas, we need energy for our economy. So they decided to import gas. So LNG is just gas in a liquid form. So LNG, it just comes in, it gets injected into the pipeline, and it mixes with our gas, and we get like more gas. That's all in the system. Now, all through this period, while the Awami League government was there, they ignored gas exploration completely, absolutely completely. They used to do only a little bit of exploration just to show people that, yeah, okay, we are doing. But there was a group of people in the country and within that party that believed that there's no point doing more exploration, that we have hit the bottom line in terms of gas in Bangladesh, and no point, so it's better to concentrate on importing. So they started developing importing LNG importing infrastructure. Then, as you know, that then we came up to the dollar crisis. Okay, Now, when we hit the dollar crisis, then the whole country realized, oh, but now we can't buy so much, yeah, because importing means giving out dollars. So that's when we realized that, yeah. And what has happened in the meantime? We have not even built enough facilities to import gas, because to import gas, you need what is called regasification plants. We have two floating regasification units, but we can only import about 1100 million cubic feet per day. So, and we are now producing only about 1700 million cubic per day from our own fields. So, if you add the two, we get a figure of 2,800 mmcfd. But our demand today in Bangladesh is 4,000 mmcfd. Just imagine, we are short. That's what I was saying. We are in energy crisis. Even before this, we are short by at least 1,200 million cubic feet per day of gas. Now, for that, we need to build, we need right at this time, two more of the FSRUs sizes that we have. And also we need the dollars to buy. So it's kind of, nobody, we can't even imagine to understand our problem and crisis. It's so huge that, okay, let's forget it. So industry is suffering, people don't get cooking fuel, CNGs can't get fuel. Okay, power sector, load shedding going on. Instead of gas, we are having to use furnace oil. So it's all kinds of mess has penetrated the energy system.
And what about during the interim government? Was there any gas exploration of? Uh, I mean, there was the talk of the 100 wells, and was there any advancements made during the interim government?
You see, this 50 well and 100 well program was actually started by the Awami League government in the last stages, about 1 year. And why did they do that? Because that's the time when, all of us, including journalists and us, we made a huge hue and cry, and told our League government that you've completely messed up things. And they actually admitted, they actually started, that they realized that, yes, of course, we need to explore more gas. Then they themselves, the people, the very people who abandoned exploration or gas, indigenous gas, started, yes, we need more exploration and this, that. And they started doing the paperwork, tendering for offshore bidding, the deep offshore bidding. And they started this 50 program, 100 program. And as you know, during within that time that the government fell and the interim government came, and the interim government did a lot, gave a lot of lip service to continuing this thing, and it did continue. They didn't abandon that, but it lacked complete seriousness. They were complaining that because having gotten rid of the Special Powers Act, now they can't expedite this exploration because you have to go through that process of tendering and whatnot. So it was pretty, ridiculous in the way they approached this problem, because files were sitting there for funding in the planning division, and they were not getting funds. So, very little exploration activity actually happened during the 1.5 years of the interim government, but it didn't stop. It continued. And the bad news is that, whatever exploration well was completed, we've been unsuccessful. So that's not a very good news for the country. And but I don't like to believe in any way that indicates that we don't have any more gas. We do have gas. You have to continue exploration. But our one success area or success story is the Bhola area. So where we have gas, we found gas, but we don't know how much. So those programs are continuing. Maybe within a year's time, we will know better how much gas we have in the Bhola region. And in the meantime, I think within a month or two, the government will float the tenders for the deep offshore. Okay, and that's a unexplored area where a lot of us are pinning our hopes that we will find uh, at least some gas which will alleviate the immediate problems that we have.
And will the government face? Do you need requisite funds for gas exploration, and will that be a challenge given that the time of war?
Yes, you've raised a very valuable point there. I mean, why, when they were actually formulating these papers just a few weeks back, there was no war. And so we were all very hopeful that this will not go through. Now, the problem is that if you float, and these big oil companies, which are also very, very much involved and affected by this crisis, how they will react to it is another matter, and whether they will consider coming to Bangladesh to do exploration is not known. But they might well be interested, because it gives makes them they get out of the Middle East areas and try to find gas and oil in other parts of the world. They've been successful in Philippines, they've been successful in Angola and other places. So they might well be. It is very difficult to say at this point to answer this question, but it is a factor. But if I ignore that factor, then I think that there may be some interest, because India has found gas, Myanmar has found gas, and it is an unexplored area, and gas is still considered to be a transition fuel in the climate change arena. So I think
Hmm.
that we may be successful.
Thank
I
you so
like to
much for.
believe that, at least. I like to believe that, because as you can see, so much depends on that. I mean, we have not been very successful inland, onshore. Onshore, there's a drilling. 100 wells will start, and the 100. Remember, this is a thing. The 100 wells are not real 100 wells, of which only a tiny portion is actual wells, which we call exploratory wells. The rest are either appraisal wells or workover wells or step out wells, which are essentially maintenance, operational type of things to keep production at the same level, or to improve or increase production marginally.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much for that, because it helps us understand it's complete uncertain times. In here, for the short term, I wanted to ask about for the industries, manufacturing industries, with the with LNG, all the talks about LNG happening. What is LPG an option at all for industries?
Okay, yes. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with that famous quotation, which has been oft quoted by of the French queen, I think, right? And Mary Antoinette, I think her name was, who was taken out and shown the poverty on the streets of Paris,
Mhm.
and told that these people can't even eat bread. And then she said, "Why don't they eat cakes?" So it's something like that. Yes, of course, it's the same thing. I mean, in terms of energy, you get energy from LPG. If the question is, if can you afford it? Okay, can you afford it? If it's from when you compare to gas, it's right now gas price has gone up. So if you compare to gas, that it's about uh, still 2 to 2.5 times, even 3 times the price of gas. So as you can see, already they're complaining, industries, that the gas price has become very, very high, and how can they afford anything else? But LPG is available to industries if they want, because it is a private sector operation, and if industries want more LPG, they can get it. They will be supplied. And I know one industry, garments, who have a very good operation. Thing is that if they have a good operation, if their energy efficiency is high, then they will be able to afford it. But it severely cuts down on their operational profit if they use LPG instead of gas. So the answer to your question is that yes, in terms of energy, it's fine, they can use it, but in terms of affordability is another issue. But my point from an energy efficiency point of view is that if they engage good energy efficiency people and refurbish their plant to become much, much more efficient, and so that they don't waste energy, I think they can afford LPG.
So we have current plan to be able to domestically get access to LPG.
Well, LPG is an imported fuel, just like, and it's imported by the private sector. And I'm sure you're aware, you saw about what, 2, 3 months back,
Mm-hmm.
the chaotic situation developed with respect to LPG because there was
Mm-hmm.
a shortage. There was a gas shortage, so people were not getting enough gas to cook in Dhaka city. So they went to buy LPG, and then there was it caused an LPG shortage in the market. And LPG is now used in three sectors. It's also used as a transport fuel. So the shortage was actually also connected to the Iran war because they were importing LPG from Iran, but American embargo stopped that. So it's a kind of became a very messy situation. But again, at that time, uh, yeah, I recommended that there are certain fuels in Bangladesh which is critical. We must have what is called strategic reserves. Strategic reserves are those reserves which are held all the time and are not touched. They are only touched if you are in a deep crisis. Like right now, if we had a strategic reserve, I personally believe we could have controlled this octane petrol sort of chaos that is going on. Because if people knew that Bangladesh has 30 days of octane and petrol completely secure, nobody to be touched, then we would have not even talked about these kind of problems. Let me give an example of strategic reserves. Japan has a strategic reserve, the country with the highest strategic reserves in the world, of 200 to 220 days, depending on which fuel. 200 days, can you imagine? I mean, how many days have we been into the Iran war? 35 days, something like that. And so they have got 6 times more than that they've stored, which is not touched. So they don't really have to worry about it. But a lot of people say these kind of reserves are a luxury, because if we want to keep strategic reserves, we'll have to buy them, and our dollar will be sitting there idle over there. But I say that our dollar reserves is also sitting idle. Okay, that's also not, we are not using this. It's not. But if so, why, if we can keep gold, why can't we keep liquid gold, which is good? Now I have a point here which I want to make. That is, when you have reserves, you fill up your reserves, strategic reserves, when the price is low, which means that, let's say, when diesel price or the crude oil price is $60, we will fill up our strategic reserves when the price is so low, and then keep quiet. Of course, our money is sitting there. And as soon as the price goes to $80, $90, and right now is $120 nearly, double, if we draw down on our reserves, just the fact that this will allow us to control price volatility. So I am a big believer in strategic reserves, and I think developing countries can also afford it. It's a mindset. If they go for it, even if there is no crisis, they can always use this to hedge, for hedging against very high prices.
Thank you so much. That's a very interesting point, and I mean, for the long term, and also for something to consider with war happening more often, as we see the unexpected, the impossible sort of coming to life. I also wanted to ask about this. So, with the current situation where it seems that they're scrambling to deal with the crisis, there has been a report by the British paper, The Independent, quoting a unnamed Bangladeshi official and saying that the Bangladesh might be the first country to run out of oil. Uh, is What is your reading of this situation?
Well, I don't know whether it will be first, but will certainly be amongst those countries which can be considered to be in that bracket. I think maybe Philippines, or there are other countries which will probably may run out before us, but maybe 1 week here or 1 week there. The important point that they're trying to make, as I understand, is that we are very, very vulnerable. And that is true. That's absolutely correct. Like I said, if you're 100% dependent on imported oil, okay, and if there's any disruption and you don't keep strategic reserves, it goes without saying that you will be badly affected. And it goes without saying, if the ships are not coming in at a regular interval, then you will run out of liquid fuel. So this is pretty, in that way, is a kind of is an obvious thing, no brainer that it will happen. But the important thing is that, have we done anything to alleviate this problem, so that we don't get badly affected. So that's what I want to emphasize, that we need to make this such, because it appears that our sort of customers, especially those on motorbikes, are people who are well, I don't know, they're a bit gullible in terms of what they hear and see, and they are not going to be very easily convinced from the government saying that we have enough oil, don't worry, or something like that. So in that sense, I would say that we would have to think deeply about this. Some countries, like Myanmar, I believe, and Sri Lanka, have used kind of digital methods, QR code and blockchain, to try to solve this problem. I don't know how much success they've achieved, but I believe it's going well. And I think we have also started, but we are not using the full extent of digitalization. So we are giving this card, which is very manual type of a system. So if they use digital methods here, and then I think believe that we can control this, what we see, the chaos at the pumps. The funny thing is that we are seeing chaos at the pumps with petrol and yeah, octane. And petrol, majority of the petrol is produced in the country, and we're not seeing much problem with diesel, at least in the pump that I go to. And the ratio between diesel and gasoline is probably 1:4. It's 1 million ton and 4 million ton. That's the annual year. So I was thinking that, oh my God, we'll probably really face problems with diesel, but the government is handling that very well. So if they can handle something which is 100% imported, and yeah, we required 4 million tons of that, but the government is facing a problem with something which is less than 1 million ton, and of that, about 60-70% is available in the country, goes to tells you that there is more than just supply, whatever the storage there. It's more to do with supply chain management and other logistical issues here.
Do you think there's just been a lot of panic buying regarding this situation with petrol and octane, and that has created a crisis?
Yes, of course, definitely. There's panic buying. There's no doubt about it. But I will not say, like what I was saying earlier on, that that's not the whole story. Partly, of course, because the government did not convey to the people that how secure they are and why they don't have to worry, and that's a problem. So let me give you an example in a mathematical way. We tend to do this kind of analysis of flow. We call it flow analysis. Like, let's say there's a road and there's a certain number of cars. There's a very high number of cars, but every day those cars go through the road and there is no jam. But suddenly one day you see there is a big jam in the same road, and you wonder why, what is happening, why should that happen? And then you realize that it's raining. Okay, it's a rainy day. And that's now, even to an ordinary common person, you would understand, oh yes, in a rainy day, you tend to get a jam when you don't. So imagine that to be equivalent of a rainy day, that, what is happening to supplying of, petrol and octane to cars and motorcycles. So we have encountered a rainy day in that supply. And once it gets there's a pile up. It's very difficult to remove this pile up unless you remove all the things which are causing it. So my personal thing is that yes, there is panic buying, no doubt about it, and yes, that people are yeah, buying more than yeah, and maybe hoarding a little bit, but you have to look at other things like what lot of the pump owners in television in public have said we are not getting as much we used to earlier on. Maybe the trust filling station and the other big ones are getting, but they are not. They are complaining that they are not getting as much they used to, and there are some smaller ones. If you put them into three categories, they are not getting yeah, octane and petrol at all, or they're getting it once a week. So I think that the government needs to see all these things, study the whole thing, and yeah. And personally, I believe if they had a lot of time because this problem started before E. So if they use this whole time to design a system which they're seeing in Myanmar and Sri Lanka to sort of streamline the delivery of fuel, and then I think that this problem wouldn't have occurred, because if there was a problem due to actual supply less or storage, then we would have faced this problem earlier with diesel. Okay. However, having said that, one should not underestimate the influence of motorbikes and the riders. This is a new category of demand which has come up in the last 3 years, and there's been a huge sort of increase in the number of motorbikes. So if anything goes wrong, it will create a kind of a log jam, as we're seeing. Same with cars. What has happened is that even 3 4 years back, a lot of the cars, due to problems with CNG, have converted back. They've come back to the gasoline mode, and uh, all the new cars that we are seeing in the last 4 5 years are also staying in the gasoline mode. Plus, we are probably seeing a sort of a influx of more newer cars on the roads. So everything put together has created the situation as we see. But the government has probably done something which sort of caused this thing to not operate properly.
So this so to deal with the current crisis, the government announced austerity measures, as you mentioned, about Myanmar, the QR codes, Sri Lanka. Um, I wanted to ask you
No, I
about
think I think that is totally separate. I think the government's austerity measures is to just save energy overall. I don't think
right.
that government's measures will yeah, has anything to do with the road situation. Anyway,
How,
I'll answer that question. Yes. Okay.
but
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you how do you think the road situation uh, can be fixed at this point? Is this state it is in?
If the situation doesn't worsen in any way, as in the world situation, I mean, then I think the government would need to look seriously into how they distribute and what are the bottlenecks in the distribution channel for petrol and octane. Okay. It's no good just saying that we have enough and don't worry, because that hasn't worked up to now. So they have to go deeper into this thing, find a way of giving them yeah, their whatever they want in a sort of an organized manner. I don't believe that that has got much to do with the amount of yeah, stock they're holding, because the petrol is continuously being produced in the country, and most motorcycles use petrol. Octane a little bit is imported, and that amount import can always take place from various other sources. It's diesel that is the real problem, because we're talking about millions, yeah, several million tons, and the total octane import is about 200,000 tons, Okay, so there's a huge difference in scale between things. So why would there be a problem? So the government will have to concentrate more on the distribution channel and everything else. And yeah, the government should be a bit more honest and actually reveal to the people what exactly is the situation. Because right now, I think the government, the people probably don't completely believe the government. If they really want to prove, they can take a whole lot of journalists and show them the depot and show them where the petrol is coming from, and sort of get experts to have a round table and talk about it. Also, yeah, approach the people who are yeah, the ride sharing people through their companies. So a whole lot of things can be done to alleviate that problem. But that's not that will not say that's an energy problem. I would not want to yeah, dwell too long on this, because I don't think that supply of petrol and octane is a energy problem.
You, you, you do think it's a management problem at
It is a
this?
matter. I definitely believe it's a matter. If it was an energy problem, it would have affected diesel earlier. We would have been in a big position. However, there are issues with diesel, which we're hearing it, like a lot of farmers are not getting it. Remember, diesel is used in at least 10 different applications, including boats, shipping boats, and a lot of other machineries also use, yeah, tractors. Okay, everywhere we are hearing, I mean, newspaper, we are seeing and hearing every day that there are issues and there are problems. Okay, in different years, but not at the same scale as what we are seeing at petrol pumps with cars and motorcycles. That's not, we're not seeing that. Undoubtedly, there is a we are in a very stressful situation, like all other countries, Philippines and all. The earlier question that was asked, that we will run out of yeah, the first, but we might run out of first, but that will all depend on, look, every day the government is saying some ships are coming in. Okay, and we are very much dependent on that. If for some reason those ships are not coming in, okay, then of course, yeah. So the comment that was made by the independent is based on the fact that something may happen and those ships may not be able to come. Then of course we will be the one of the first countries who will face a crisis.
Where would the ships be coming from?
Well, I
Just
mean,
to
yeah. There are two. Yeah. One is that if the Hormuz Strait opens up and everything is sorted out, of course, there's no problem. But they're assuming that the Hormuz Strait will not open up. Now, if it doesn't open up in, let's say, 2 months' time, then of course, we are talking about very serious issues here, because especially at diesel, the amount of diesel we need cannot be sourced from these. Right now, as you can see, if you see the numbers, the diesel coming in, like if the diesel coming in from India is on only 1 day's demand, and the other diesel thing which is coming is a 3 days demand. Okay, but mind you, if you get 10 shipments like that, 3 days, that's 30 days. So we are safe for some time. But the thing is that our diesel demand, like I said, was so high that our normal supply that we are getting from the Middle East has to be restored at some point, has to be restored, because substituting that in this world situation, that amount of diesel is very, very, very difficult. But like I was saying, substituting the octane demand, which is very low, is very easy. But the government has a problem in that area. Okay, but and it's not a with octane and petrol, it's not a running out of octane and petrol that will be a problem. It will be how yeah, in a situation where people are panicked, in a situation where there is yeah, fear about other things, that they are having the problem. But with diesel, we may face a real problem if the supply dries up, or even the supply gets constrained, because the demand is so high, that the ships have to come in regularly.
And is there anything, the austerity measures that the government has implemented, is there anything we can, more we can do to, for energy conservation and to deal with this, what as you're describing, a crisis resulting from diesel, which, you know, are not really making headlines as much as petrol is.
I am not at all sort of happy with the austerity measures that the government has undertaken. I cannot see the justification of reducing the office hours by 1 hour and expect that there will be a significant saving. Uh, my idea is that what they have done in Sri Lanka is something which I like better, is to completely shut down for 1 day. That is, give one extra day they can work from home. The why I say that is that, look, in this year, what the government has done, people will have to come to office every day. It's just that they'll leave 1 hour earlier. Okay, how much that will save, I don't know. But the road transport, which is the main thing right now we're talking about, the fuel, liquid fuel, will be used every day. But if we have one complete day of holiday, then of course people don't have to come and go. So that amount of fuel is saved. So that's the first point I like to make. The second point is that the government has, I think, yeah, talked about what was the other thing that they gave? Can you help me
Uh,
with that?
the government reduced the office hours, also the shopping, mall
Oh, the
hours.
shopping. Yeah, okay. The shopping hour reduction is again what we found last time we did it. It did not yield as much result as we expected. Why? I'll tell you why. From the total, again, like I said, all these measures affect only electricity. It does not affect the oil that we're talking about, that is diesel, petrol, and octane. However, it can and does affect furnace oil, which is used to produce electricity at the intermediate and peak hours. So that is where I think the government is not clear about the savings. Why I'm saying this is that our total uh, consumption by the commercial sector, which includes shops and all, is only 11% of the electricity. The majority of the consumption, 57%, is domestic. So and if you shut down offices and shops, people will go home and be home, and they will be consuming that electricity, maybe a little less, but at home. So it doesn't produce very much here. So even if you shut down every single commercial establishment in Bangladesh, okay, uh, electricity saving is only 11%. Okay, and we know we can't do that, so we'll only save maybe 1 or 2% of the commercial electricity demand. Electricity demand, I personally believe that if you want to save furnace oil, do load shedding. It's simple. Load shedding, in my mind, is forced conservation. It is better to do load shedding and save the entire fuel than to do this kind of measures, which kind of distorts things across sectors. And so it's not something which I like very much. The what they could have done, instead of reducing 1 hour in the afternoon, they could have started office an hour earlier and then finish off 1 hour earlier. That would have probably yielded better results. So I have differences in opinion from the year, because I don't think that the savings will be as great as they are thinking they will. And also I believe the savings will not be of diesel, petrol, and octane.
Do you think the government's also rationing? What about that? Is that a measure that you think is going to work?
Rationing is always a good thing if you can make it work properly. If it does not lead to undue resentment amongst the populace, then it's always a good year. Uh, Even in the distribution of, let's say, gasoline to uh, the motorcycles and all, and I talked to some of them, And they said, yeah, well, we are willing to accept, some form of rationing. So, but what they could not understand why the government started rationing and then limited it, stopped rationing, and now they can't give. So it's a kind of a hodgepodge of measures, which is probably contributed to the kind of situation that we are in. So rationing is a good thing. Like I said, why I like rationing. I said why I like load shedding, because it's forced conservation, and rationing is something like that. It is forced conservation. You see, is if when you request people to do and conserve, they rarely do it. They rarely do it, or some do it. Most don't. Okay, but if you do rationing, you force them. Okay, you don't give them as much as they could, and it gets saved, and it's a total savings. And so rationing is what I like.
So forced forced conservation, as you're saying. So just to kind of wrap up and come here, do you believe that there will be periods of time for where Bangladesh's industry specifically for will have to take austerity measures themselves as well to the
Yes, I
scarcity?
think that there are. You raised a good point. I actually didn't think about it, but yes, of course, there are yeah, austerity measures the industry can do, but that should be done in a way where you use technology. I would, if most industries opted for AI and automation, they would be able to do this savings. For example, often, we find in a big space, there is a light on. There's nobody there. That light is not needed. But often we don't know whether it's needed or not. So if you integrate it with AI would know if that those lights are needed or not. And also with fans and lot of other industrial equipment and devices, those can be done. So I would ask industry to opt for AI assisted automation to achieve this, rather than anything else, and that would actually greatly improve their performance as well, productivity and performance. And nowadays everything is AI, so why would they do it? I mean, these are available at very very cheap prices now. So I would ask industries to opt for AI conservation, AI assisted conservation measures.
That's a very interesting answer. Thank you, and thank you so much. And the last question I had was about solar power, which
Yeah, but
uh,
before that, I'd like to give an example. I'm using this opportunity to sell this idea to everybody. Look, let me give you a very simple example of energy efficiency and how well it can work. Okay. Do you have any idea which device, like when I talk of that there are refrigerators all over Bangladesh, ACs and all, which device consumes the highest or largest quantity of electricity? There are lights also, remember, lights, and then what do you think? At one time, it used to be lights, but it's gone now. This is no longer the highest. You know why? Because the lights have become very efficient. Now we have LED lights and all, they consume very little. So lights are no longer the largest single device that year. So which is the next year? What do you think?
is
Just
it stove?
Well,
The
you could be right, except that its stoves are not electrically run in Bangladesh. Okay, but if they
right.
were, you would probably be right because every household has stoves. But
There-
it is fans, fan. The ceiling fan.
Oh, fans. Yes.
Everywhere, it's everywhere. Okay, now let me give an example. If you might be seeing the advertisements in various places, Walton and others giving they are calling a new type of fan. They call it BLDC. It's called bladeless direct current fans. Now these fans consume about 35 to 40 watt. Okay, and then all the standard fans that we have now around the world is about 75 to 80, and some are even higher, like 100 and more. And think, I said these are the largest consuming devices. Think of all over Bangladesh, these are fans. if you can convert all the fans into efficient mode, in efficient fans, BLDC fan, just imagine how much savings you can do. And this is a doable option, but the government has to start, the government has to give the right incentives, the right awareness campaigns, and everything has to go in to this thing. But people are not going to throw their fans away just like that because I say so. But at least the newer fans, people will buy the better fans. So even if you get 50% of the newer fans are BLDC fans, and some like good aware people will throw away the old fans. And so this is just an example I'm giving you. There are many other things which can be done, and we need to do that because we have become an energy importing country. So when you import something, you're using up hard earned foreign currency. It's no longer that we were using our own gas and we can squander it. So we have to be very careful, and that will become our kind of the base of achieving some kind of a sustainability. Now, your renewable energy. Okay. Now, people like me who work in energy efficiency believe that renewable energy in this world has no hope in hell to achieve what they're saying they will, unless you do energy efficiency. So like when you're talking about net zero, like achieving net zero by 2050, in all this analysis, if you just search the internet, you will see they talk about energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is a big chunk, okay, of the 100% that you need to do by 2050. You remove a big chunk by energy efficiency. After that, you talk about renewable energy. So, okay, renewable energy performance in Bangladesh has been, as bad as our neglecting gas exploration. So these are the two things we've been talking about very seriously for the last 3 years, very seriously. And in both these categories, Bangladesh government or the planners or whoever decision makers have scored fail mark. Okay, they have just completely flunked. I would say, they have not done anything. They've had no achievement. Absolutely. Okay. In the meantime, in the last 2 years, you can Google it and see Pakistan has become a country which is now showcased as one of the countries which has reduced their LNG demand, LNG importing demand by doing renewables. They have in 2 years' time, they have built more than 15,000 megawatts of solar. And so much so, there are certain areas like Sialkot where in the daytime there is no demand from the grid. Okay, there's no demand from the grid because they've done so much solar, and many other good things have happened and are happening in Pakistan. Why? Because they were not getting enough electricity from the grid. We had the situation also in Bangladesh at one time, and we built 6 million homes, but all those have been destroyed because our Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina wanted 100% electrification. So by doing that, she destroyed all these solar home systems. So Bangladesh right now we are in a very bad shape. Our solar program is not going where it should go. Things are happening. You will always see one industry doing rooftop solar and one or two year coming, but it's nothing close to what we need and what we want to do. And if you evaluate it in the context of the crisis that we are in and we were before, it's a complete disaster, I would say, not being able to achieve here. Now renewable energy is become so cheap now around the world, including Bangladesh, not that cheap in Bangladesh, that it's a kind of a no-brainer. Why won't I do renewable energy? But even in this context, yeah, at one time during the Awami League time, their main target was to build big power plants and all, and they, along with their friends, were in the take. Like more fossil fuel, more power, more money in their pockets, right? So that led to a situation where gas exploration was neglected. So it was LNG, okay, because they need the LNG to run those power plants that they have built, and yeah, ignoring renewable energy. So we are now in a very bad shape. Well, let's say the yeah, Amili government didn't do anything, the interim government didn't do anything. So you know what? How much hope do we have this government will do something? If they don't do anything, they will face the music in by the time it's time for them to go, which is another 5 years from now. So they have to do something now. But it's a very good opportunity. Very good opportunity.
And so just beyond the government as well, I want to end on, I really enjoyed your, and I really think your point was important about the fans. Thailand's premier has said that air conditioners shouldn't be used in offices, and um, if I'm not wrong, and urge citizens to wear half sleeve shirts. Philippines, they're using stairs. So, are there some? I want to end on notes of some things that we citizens, ordinary citizens, can do every day to conserve energy through this crisis caused by the war.
Absolutely. There's absolutely no substitute for that. You can always do that. But like I said, conservation is like preaching religion to people who don't want to be convinced about, yeah, oh, this is good and this is good. So it's like one of those, like a goody goody messages which don't reach. Okay. So I believe those should be done. I believe awareness is very important. How many people, when we leave the room, we put the fan off, okay, or put off extra lights in places which is not needed. And so there are many many things, like we when we're brushing our teeth, we let the water run continuously. And so if these are become a part of our lifestyle, so economists believe that the best way it is to increase the price, and people by themselves will do that. Okay, they have a point there, but it's in a developing country where people can't afford high energy prices. It's difficult, and it's also difficult for the political government to do those things. So of course awareness, and I would be very happy if our prime minister, she is doing a lot of good things here and there at demonstrating how, so he can definitely come out and become a champion for raising awareness in terms of conserving energy and energy efficiency. Remember these two words: energy conservation and energy efficiency. Okay, conservation is what you do by yourself, and but and then though no investment is needed. But energy efficiency is some investment is needed, like the fan I said. You need to throw away your old fan and use new. But or when you're going out to buy, you buy it's a bit expensive, a little bit more expensive, like instead of like a fan which is 4,000 taka, this will be about 6,000 taka. So there is an issue over here for government to give some kind of an incentive for these fans. So energy efficiency always requires some kind of a government sponsorship or government assistance.
Well, and also it's a big lesson for the media, I think, for us to also engage in awareness. So thank you so much, Dr. Jazasain, for your insights. I think very valuable during this time. Um, so thank you so much for this conversation. We hope to have you soon at the Daily Star.